Hello everyone, we're diving into a significant topic today. We're peeling back the layers of the complex and historical Israeli-Hamas conflict. This conflict has deep roots and has shaped the course of history in the Middle East. If you find our content insightful, do hit the subscribe button and share this video to spread knowledge. Stay tuned to gain a comprehensive understanding of this historical conflict. The Israeli-Hamas conflict didn't just start overnight. It has deep roots, tracing back to nationalist movements in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. This period saw the rise of Jewish and Arab nationalist movements, both fueled by a growing sense of identity and a desire for self-determination. On one side, we had the Jewish people longing to return to their ancestral homeland. Their movement was galvanized by a wave of anti-Semitism in Europe and the promise of a national home for the Jewish people in the Balfour Declaration of 1917. This British government statement had a profound impact, not just on the Jewish people, but also on the Arab population who already lived in Palestine. On the other side, we had the Arab population, who also began to develop a strong sense of nationalism around the same time. They saw the influx of Jewish immigrants and the Balfour Declaration as a threat to their homeland. The clash of these two nationalist movements led to a period of tension and violence in the 1920s and 1930s. There were violent riots and revolts as both sides tried to assert their claim over the land. This further escalated when the British, who were then in control of Palestine, tried to suppress the Arab revolt with force. In response, Jewish paramilitary forces were established to protect the Jewish population and their interests. This period is crucial in understanding the roots of the Israeli-Hamas conflict, as it set the stage for the tension, distrust and hostility that would continue for decades. Thus, the seeds of the conflict were sown, leading to the establishment of Jewish paramilitary forces and the repression of the Arab revolt by the British. The conflict remained relatively calm during World War II, but the tensions persisted and eventually escalated. Like a dormant volcano, it was only a matter of time before the tensions erupted into open conflict. The catalyst came in the form of the 1947 United Nations Partition Plan for Palestine. This plan was aimed at resolving the conflict by dividing Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states. However, it was met with fierce resistance from both parties, leading to its failure. This failure, instead of dousing the flames, fanned them further, igniting the Palestine War that lasted from 1947 to 1949. The Palestine War was a tumultuous period that saw the loss of many lives and the displacement of countless people. It was a time of turmoil and uncertainty, as each side sought to establish their claim over the contested land. The war ended, but not the struggle. The embers of conflict kept smoldering beneath the surface, waiting for the next spark. And the spark came in 1967 in the form of the Six-Day War. This rapid-fire conflict was a game-changer, as it led to the Israeli military occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. This development marked a significant shift in the power dynamics of the conflict. It was no longer just about competing claims over the land, but also about control and dominance. The Six-Day War was a turning point in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It established a new status quo, one that was marked by an imbalance of power and control. This new reality further deepened the divide between the two parties, fueling the flames of conflict even more. It wasn't just a territorial dispute anymore. It was a struggle for survival, for identity, for self-determination. Each side was fighting not just for the land, but for their place in it. Each side was fighting not just against the other, but for their very existence. This series of events further intensified the conflict, setting the stage for the current status quo. Despite various attempts at peace, the conflict between Israel and Hamas remains unresolved. There were glimmers of hope in the mid-90s. The Oslo Accords, a set of agreements signed between 1993 and 1995, represented a significant stride towards a two-state solution. These accords carved a pathway for mutual recognition and the possibility of Palestinians governing themselves in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. However, the accords left several critical issues unresolved. These so-called final status issues include the borders of Israel and Palestine, the status of Jerusalem, the right of return for Palestinian refugees, and the matter of Israeli settlements in the West Bank. Each of these issues is a thorny one, embedded in decades of history and complicated by deep-seated fears and grievances on both sides. As the years rolled on, public support for a two-state solution began to wane. The dream of two nations living side by side in peace seemed to slip further and further out of reach. This has been accompanied by political upheaval and a series of wars between Hamas, the governing authority of the Gaza Strip, and Israel. These conflicts have brought devastation, loss, and hardship to people on both sides. Despite ongoing negotiations between the Israeli government and the Palestine Liberation Organization, mediated by the International Quartet on the Middle East, the path to peace remains elusive. The Arab League and Jordan also play crucial roles in these dialogues, but so far, a comprehensive, lasting solution has been out of grasp. This is not just a political issue, it is a human issue affecting millions of lives. The casualties of this conflict are not just numbers, but real people with hopes, dreams, and families. And so, the conflict continues, with both sides suffering casualties and no clear resolution in sight. The Israeli-Hamas conflict is a complex issue with a long history and no easy solutions. We've delved into its roots, tracing back to the nationalist movements among Jews and Arabs in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. We've seen how the Balfour Declaration in 1917 and the emergence of Palestinian Arab nationalism escalated the conflict, leading to violent riots, revolts, and the establishment of Jewish paramilitary forces. We've also journeyed through the escalation of the conflict as tensions grew into open sectarian conflict between Jews and Arabs. We've seen how the unresolved United Nations partition plan for Palestine in 1947 led to the Palestine War, and how the current status quo began with the Israeli military occupation of the West Bank and Gaza during the 1967 Six-Day War. In our exploration of the current status and unresolved issues, we've discussed the casualties on both sides, the dwindling public support for a two-state solution, and the political upheaval and wars that have ensued between Hamas and Israel. Today, the Israeli government and the Palestine Liberation Organization are engaged in direct negotiations, with mediation from the Quartet on the Middle East. The Arab League and Jordan also play significant roles in these ongoing peace talks. Despite the challenges, these negotiations represent a glimmer of hope in a conflict that has spanned over a century. While this conflict is complex and deeply rooted in history, it's essential to remember that at its heart, it impacts real people, families, and communities. As we continue to learn and understand, let's foster empathy and support peaceful resolutions. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. We hope it gave you some insights into this long-standing conflict. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.